This is a meeting of the Administration Committee of the Wilmette Village Board. I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us today, and thank you to everybody for your valuable feedback to this committee. Mike, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Trustee Dodd?
Here.
Trustee Sullivan?
Here.
Trustee Barrow?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum present.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to start by just kind of going through the usual kind of information regarding the remote meeting and things like that. So bear with me, everybody, for those of you who attended a couple times. This meeting is being conducted remotely via Microsoft Teams software. The state of Illinois is still under portions of a stay-at-home order, which was issued by Governor Pritzker as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, all in-person meetings of the village have been canceled. The state has amended the Open Meetings Act to permit electronic meetings, and we are conducting our business in compliance with state law and the Opens Meeting Act. This meeting is being broadcast live on local channel 6 and at the village's YouTube page. Sorry. A recording of the meeting will be archived on the village's website. A remote meeting requires a different mechanic for public participation, so to ensure that our residents and other interested parties have the opportunity to participate in this meeting. We have solicited public comment via email, so if you sent an email to publiccomment@wilmette.com prior to the start of this meeting, our staff will read the email during the appropriate portion of the meeting. Members of the public watching YouTube Live wishing to comment during the designated public comment period, you may submit comments through the chat feature on YouTube Live, and a member of the village staff will read your comments. For those of you who've connected via Microsoft Teams or telephone and wish to address the committee, I will ask people to speak up when it is time for public comment. Due to logistics, I will first ask everyone to identify themselves. If they would like to address the committee, we will then assemble a list and call on individual people name by name. For those who choose to speak, I would like to remind you that you have 3 minutes. Comments from the public, no matter how they were received, will be recorded into the meeting minutes as we typically do. The agenda materials for today's meeting were posted on wilmette.com on Monday. Hopefully many of you who are in attendance also received an email on them. We provide these in advance of the meeting, so all members of the committee have an opportunity to review prior to our meeting. So with that, the first really item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from last meeting. So I'd like a motion from the committee to approve the minutes of the Administration Committee meeting that was held on July 30th, 2020.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. So Mr. Brayman, can you please call the roll to approve the minutes?
Trustee Sullivan?
Aye.
Trustee Barrow?
Aye.
Trustee Dodd?
Aye. Okay, so the minutes are approved. So now we'll move on to the kind of the heart of the meeting. Before we get started, I'd just like to make a few brief comments. So I'd just like to share some broad comments about today's meeting and how we'll go about this. This is our third administration meeting on the topic of village boards and commissions, and we have made some great progress to date. Thanks you again to everybody who's been participating in this process, and we're all very appreciative of that. To recap where we are, we have finalized the purpose and functions of the Housing Commission. We have reviewed the goals of the Human Relations Commission and discussed and updated the term limits, number of members for each commission, and qualifications for each commission. I expect today we will also finalize the purpose and functions of the HRC. So at this stage, the Administration Committee will be making a recommendation to the Village Board outlining the goals of the HRC and the Housing Commission, and I would hope the board would move forward quickly to support our recommendations. So today, our focus will be more on the selection process for boards and commissions. We will follow a similar process to what we did for our previous two meetings. So today will mostly be fact-finding and kind of an educational meeting for us. We will hear from our legal counsel, Jeff Stein, on the state mandates for the selection to boards and commissions, then from our village manager, Mike Brayman, who will provide a recap of a memo from President Belinsky about his current process, and then we will open up the meeting to public comment to hear feedback from the community. This will give Peter, Dan, and I an opportunity to hear all perspectives on the selection process. I would hope then that our next meeting, which is already scheduled, so for those of you who want to put this on your calendar for Thursday, September 17th, that would be our last meeting, and at this meeting we will discuss and finalize any modifications we'd like to make to the selection process. So if you have the kind of the agenda up, or hopefully all of you can see the agenda. Let me bring it up just because for some reason it is, sorry, hold on just a moment. For some reason I can't see it, Mike, because of your name in front of me, so I'm just gonna. Okay, so if you looked, I kind of. Oh, I should remind everybody to make sure you're on mute. That was a good reminder if you're not. So, okay, so today we're going to start out then with kind of the reviewing and looking at the mission, purpose, and the membership of the Human Relations Commission. This is a continuation of our discussion we had last time. So there are just some open issues that the staff has looked at for us. And then we'll really introduce the topic of appointment and selection process. So as you can see, we'll have corporate counsel make a presentation, as I said, then we'll talk about the village process. And then we've got some examples from other communities. And then we will, after that, and after we go through the presentation, we will solicit feedback from the community. So, and then as the agenda says, if there's any new business, we will discuss that. And then for anybody who would like to speak about something that's not on the agenda, we'll open it up to public comment again at the end of the meeting. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Mr. Brayman. Are you going to start? Yes, you'll be starting the discussion for us, correct?
Yes, thank you, Trustee Dodd. Moving on to the first slide here, the Human Relations Commission mission statement as provided in the Village Code. This had come up at our last meeting, where Trustee Dodd had suggested a more narrative statement to lead in, followed by a bullet point list of purpose and functions. And this is the statement that Trustee Dodd had suggested at the last meeting verbally. We thought it'd be helpful to put it down in writing for the committee to review and confirm that everybody was comfortable moving forward. I recall from our last meeting, the general sentiment was that this sort of mission statement was appropriate and supported by the committee, but we just wanted to put it out here and make sure that this was a statement to bring forward to the board as part of our final report. If there's any suggestions or comments from the committee, this would be the appropriate time. Otherwise, this will be what we will submit to the board.
So, Mike, my only comment, and whether it's on this or just in general, but I do think it's important somewhere, and I think this captures everything we talked about and is very well written, but I think it's important to say that this commission does work in conjunction, or is accountable to both the village board and staff. I want to make sure that it doesn't give a perception that this is a commission that is free on its own. It does have to be accountable to the board of trustees. And I think it's important that it says what its role is, whether it's in the mission statement or somewhere when we list these.
Okay, we'll work on how to add that in as we move forward here. And I think one thing that'll help address that as well was, I think it was Trustee Dodd's previous suggestion that commissions such as Human Relations, EEC, Housing, and the like do annual reports to the Administration Committee and kind of highlight what their plans are and goals are for the year coming forward as well, to help make sure that there's support amongst the board for those agenda items moving forward. So we'll work on that as part of our final report to the board and for our next meeting.
Yeah, I think Dan's point would fit very, very well within one of the bullet points that I expect would follow.
All right, very good. Then I'll move on to those. So at our last meeting, there was discussion of the Human Relations Commission purpose, and this purpose that's up on the slide here is currently what's in our code 1 through 9. Number 7 is a carryover from when we consolidated a number of boards and commissions in 2010 into the Human Relations Commission, and that's the Fine Arts Commission, promotion of the arts. We don't really feel that's relevant to what direction we're going with the Human Relations Commission, and we as staff would recommend removing that from the purpose moving forward. You'll see multicultural events is also part of that line, but just down below in number 8, the commission's purpose is to plan or support community events that bring together diverse members of the community. So I don't think we lose that portion of that, but it would be appropriate, we feel, to remove the promotion of the arts. And then in the last meeting, the committee had asked us to do a comparison of the village's current purpose with the DOJ suggested guidelines. So the memorandum that's in the agenda materials provides a side-by-side comparison of the two. And in reviewing those, they are substantially similar. We as staff feel that we're moving in the right direction with the existing purpose. One thing we do think is worth adding is number 10, to develop ways of anticipating, preparing for, and relieving community tensions arising from intergroup conflict. It's somewhat similar to number 3 above, to address and make recommendations concerning emerging community needs. But I think in discussing this with some folks and reviewing it, this addition does help broaden the HRC's role to resolve conflict and really more quickly respond to community tensions and concerns. So we do feel like that would be an appropriate addition. And with that, I think we're fairly consistent with those DOJ guidelines and have a really solid purpose and foundation for the commission to start their work.
So I think what Trustee Sullivan was bringing up then would be that maybe we add something here then that says consistent to kind of what we did on the Housing Commission around, report back to the village board on an annual basis or something. I can't remember the exact language we have.
Yep. Okay, we'll review what we have. I don't have it
Yep.
at my fingertips, and we'll roll that into the committee's final recommendation to the village board.
Yeah, and even as number 10, I understand what you're saying, but like to develop proposals to present to the board on ways of anticipating, preparing. Sort of.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember, Trustee Sullivan, Trustee Barrow, if we talked about this or not, but I do think, and I've shared this a little bit with Mike, that I do think this is Dan, you're bringing up a really good point, and I do think we could be talking when we present this to the village, to the whole board, about just ways we can have these commissions come and kind of do a report to us of what they accomplished from the year and what they would like to accomplish in the next year. That will help us understand what the focus is and help us provide any direction if we need to. And I think that's something we could be doing with other commissions besides just human relations and housing. Some of them are very clear. Zoning board, obviously, some of them have clearly defined things they're already reporting to the board because we're getting information from them on a very regular basis, but others it's not quite as consistent.
Right. Well, no, and I appreciate, because when I was reading and preparing for this, I keep thinking of like our environmental commission that does a terrific job bringing ideas to the board that they want to explore. They research them, or they work with other groups. And I think I used it the last time. The League of Women Voters were the ones who wanted to really start to put a ban on coal tar. I know they talked to a number of trustees, and we sent it to the Environmental Commission. They did the research and came back with a proposal to say this is why we support it. So that's why I'm trying to make sure we balance, and that's how I sort of see these commissions operating as well.
Okay, that's helpful feedback. We'll make those adjustments as we move forward here. Any other discussion on the purpose before I move on to membership of the HRC? Okay. So at our last committee meeting on July 30th, we had a global discussion of preferred or necessary or needed backgrounds and experience for all of our boards and commissions. And we did touch briefly on the Human Relations Commission. And this first bullet point here is what's currently in the village code. And as you'll see, a number of that continues to be a holdover from our 2010 consolidation. Public health or medical professional is related to the Board of Health. Promotion of the arts is fine arts. Fostering youth-oriented services for the Youth Commission, and so on. So based on the committee's discussions, it certainly seemed like there was a need and a desire to update these preferred backgrounds and experiences for the direction we're taking the HRC moving forward. So the bottom bullet point here is the suggested language to incorporate into the village code on our preferred backgrounds and experience, in that the HRC shall consist of a diverse mix of residents in regards to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, income levels, as well as persons with disability, those with training or experience in promotion of diversity and cultural understanding, fostering youth-oriented services, and veterans affairs. So it's much more focused on, towards those types of DOJ guidelines and our purpose we had just discussed above, and the type of work the HRC is going to be doing moving forward. Any comments, questions from the committee on this? And this would be a code change that we would make. We would replace the first sub bullet point with the second one as we make changes at the village board level.
Yeah, Mike Peter here, and there's the part of this that I'm sort of grappling with is the phrase that follows the parenthetical, those with training or experience. And are we saying or implying there that training or experience in the promotion of diversity and cultural understanding, fostering youth and veteran affairs, that's a requirement or simply a desired background for people serving on this? I'm concerned that this language seems to be kind of narrowing.
Sure. It's certainly not a requirement. I think the idea was if we have individuals with these types of experiences and background, whether it's personally or professionally, that would be helpful to the HRC's work. So, a good thing to have, but certainly not necessary.
Right, and that's all the better if, in fact, you have one or more of those things. Suppose you would
change the language. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Trustee Barrow.
Last thought. Suppose you simply added the word before those, following the comma and before those. Listen to me, I sound like a lawyer. Simply the word including.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
There you go. And you didn't spend 3 years in law school. Good for you. Suppose we added that word. I think that changes a little bit the sense of the paragraph.
Okay, I think we can certainly make sense, and a change we'll make moving forward.
Well, since I'm going to lean on my fellow lawyer here, because the word I was hoping where I wrestle with it is the word shall. And I worry if that's just too definitive versus does that give you enough flexibility, and how do you call it in question? Again, I know what we're trying to get to and I agree with it, but it shall consist versus, preferred, or the goal of it is to consist of a diverse mix. And I think, it's all going to be, and everybody's going to be perception of what does a diverse group look like. So.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, would you suggest should consist or may consist, or that's what
I was hoping your 3 years would figure out for me.
I didn't take that place.
I leave it up to you. I just don't want it to feel like it's too boxed in, like the restraints. I think there's some flexibility, but again, if it's not a big deal, that was the one word that caught me, saying shall, just like that's a mandate.
Yeah, I think Trustee Sullivan, as I was reading the bullet point to the committee, that did catch me too, even though I helped draft this. So I think we can look at how we have this language in our other boards and commissions, and just reflect that for consistency. That would make sense.
Yeah, good idea. Good thought, Dan.
Thanks, you guys. So I think those changes are really good, and I think it would be. And Dan and Peter, I would look to get your reaction to this. So I think actually, clearly this is specific to the HRC, but I think it would be helpful to have, and we've received some feedback from like the league and others regarding this. I think it'd be helpful isn't it our goal for all of our commissions to have a diverse mix of residents in regards to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, et cetera. Maybe not people with disability, and I think it would be really helpful if we, for example, on our talent bank questionnaire, as well as on our commission and boards website pages, that we have a broad statement that says it is the goal of all of our boards and commissions to have a diverse mix of residents in regards to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, and income levels. And how do you guys, you know what I mean?
No, Kathy, I think that's a terrific idea. And that could appear in, as you say, a number of places.
Yes.
And
I mean, this would be specific to the code here on the HRC, but it would be a broad goal of the board a broad goal of us as we appoint people to the commissions. And I think that we've gotten lots of feedback from people about our desire to make sure that that all boards and commissions are diverse. And like I said, we just got some comments today from the league, which was very helpful. And I think that would be a great addition to that. So if you're okay with that, Mike and Dan.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I agree with that. I understand what, and I think however it is, whether it's on the application or our website, and that start to say, you know, here are all these commissions that we have, and our goal is to have these seats filled with a diverse mix of residents, you know, for all of that, obviously. And, you know, again, that I think this has the HRC could have sort of a little bit broader of experience level, which I think would be important here versus, you know, some of the other ones are more technical, which I understand.
Absolutely.
And somebody who doesn't have a desire to be on zoning shouldn't be forced to be on zoning.
Right. Right. That's why the language I think on the website would be a little more broad, like you said, than for the HRC. Yep. Okay.
Good.
Okay, with that concludes our discussion on the Human Relations Commission. So I think we've made some really good progress in the last couple meetings on the Housing Commission and Human Relations Commission. And we'll take all this direction from the committee and wrap it into what will be a final report to the village board once we finalize the last part of our discussion here, which is the appointment and selection process. So with this, I'm going to turn the next two slides over to Corporation Counsel Jeff Stein. There is a memorandum from him in the committee's materials regarding the appointment and selection process. And Jeff, go on.
Thank you, Mike. So as Mr. Brayman stated, that there is a memorandum that's part of this packet. It was designed to provide all the legal avenues as to the legal conclusion that I will give away now is the ending early in the movie. So sorry, but essentially most appointments rest with the village president. And are affirmed, or as the legal words are, advised and consent is provided by the village board. I'll go into a little bit as to what that means, what can be done by the different separation or the different branches of our government, and why that legal conclusion is made. So essentially the first thing we talk about that's on the slide is the village operates under a managerial form of government. And that is what lawyers or municipal lawyers call an Article 5 form of government, because it's the 5th article that's provided in the state statutes. There essentially are 4 separate forms of government, and the ones that are most important, or there's 3 that are actually really important to our discussion. The first being, which is an old Article 3 is now Article 3.1, and that is just a standard village board, city council form of government. The difference is they do not have a professional manager given as the administrative head of government. That's the default. That's what every municipality starts as. However, that can be changed, and it can only be changed in one way, and that's through a referendum process. And the village of Wilmette, I want to say something along the lines of 30 or 40 years ago, had a referendum to change their form of government to the Article 5, which is what we have. It passed, obviously. Is what we have today. So we are a manager form of government, which essentially means that Mr. Brayman is the administrative head of the government. And he has certain appointment powers, such as to my office, other employees that are essential to the village functions. However, with that comes very specific language in that Article 5 as to who makes other appointments. And there's a section in Article 5 that states that essentially it says the mayor or the president, in our case the village president, makes appointments to a board, commission, or other agency. And that's the default function here as well. And that's if it's something provided in the statute, it will usually say something along the lines of the president, with the advice and consent of the board of trustees, shall appoint members to the zoning board, or et cetera. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper in a minute. Another section of the Article 5 that's very important is the role of the Board of Trustees. And it says the powers of the council or the board is in this case, shall be quote unquote purely legislative, okay, unless given some powers somewhere else in the state statute. And that is essentially what the role of the Board of Trustees, and that their power is the advice and consent power, as opposed to the appointment power, which is the executive power held by the mayor, or in some cases held by Mr. Braman. So that's why it's kind of important to understand these varying different forms of government. And the other one that's not in play here, but is important to the analysis, is the commission form of government. Commission form of government is the legislature, the Board of Trustees, are the administrative, executive, and legislative heads of the government. They're all three. And they make appointments. Specifically, one trustee gets to make an appointment to Public Works, one trustee gets to make an appointment to Finance, and that's laid out very clearly in the statutes. We are not in Article 4, and it's important to recognize that. So with knowing that our form of government is Article 5, now we've seen what the base law is, and the law says, and for most cases, that the commissions, the Board of Commissions, the village president makes the appointment with the advice and the consent of the Board of Trustees. This is provided for this. I have listed about 15 different boards and commissions that we have before us here today. 9 of them are specifically provided for in state statute. Zoning Board, Plan Commission, Fire Pension, Police Pension, Board of Police, Fire and Police Commissioners, and the Electrical Commission are all provided for state statute, and all have the language that states that the village president shall make the appointment. And then most of those actually have the language then after that says that the village Board of Trustees, or the city council, depending where you're at, it provides advice and consent, and that is deemed to mean approval or rejection of an appointee. There are 3 other boards. The Emergency Telephone System Board, they have to meet annually, one time a year, per state statute, and that board is actually appointed by the entire Board of Trustees. Very similar to the way Mr. Braman was appointed by the entire Board of Trustees. It wasn't just one person providing a name, it was an actually collaborative appointment. The Foreign Fire Insurance Board, statutorily mandated that the chief of the fire department's on it. He's by office, he is on that board, and then 6 members of the fire department are actually elected among their own membership to serve on that board. And then we have local electoral boards that comes around possibly every 2 years, sometimes not. And the statute actually appoints specific offices to that. That's the president, the clerk, and the most senior trustee. So that leaves us, so it's very clear in the statutes and very clear in the law that those 9 have very clear and powers, or very clear direction of who gets appointed by whom. And like I said, the original 6 that I read off, it's the village president with the advice and consent of the village Board of Trustees. So that leaves us to 6 other commissions that are village commissions. The village has made these commissions up for its own purposes and to determine, what their function shall be. They're not listed in the statutes. It's not like a zoning board. And that's Housing Commission, Human Relations Commission, Transportation Commission, Environmental and Energy Commission, Building Code Board of Appeals, and the Historic Preservation Commission. And these commissions are silent in the state statutes, as I said, so that means they're also silent as to who makes the appointment. However, looking at the language of the state statutes and going back to that language, it's defining the roles of the separation of powers. The executive still makes the appointment, and the legislature, being quote unquote purely legislative, the Board of Trustees being purely legislative, means that they are there for advice and consent. And this has been kind of hammered out throughout many court opinions, but one very prevalent court opinion from the Illinois Supreme Court. And then also the Attorney General has weighed in and expanded that opinion. So in those cases, and I'm going on basically the third bullet point, in those cases, the municipality, the Board of Trustees or the City Council, wanted to change this. They wanted to have the appointment power go to someone else other than the village president or the mayor at the time. And what the court said when there was a lawsuit, the mayor actually sued its own city to keep those powers. The court said that if you change the appointment power and then you essentially change the role of the executive. And if you give it to the legislature, then you're changing the role of the legislature. And the question then became, is this a change in the form of government? And the answer was yes. Now, can the village of Wilmette change its form of government? The answer to that question is absolutely yes. It has to be done through a referendum, though. It can't just be done by village board action and can't be done any other way. The Constitution of the state actually says that it has to be done through a referendum. And when these municipalities tried to do that, the court said it doesn't matter if you're home rule or not. It doesn't matter what powers you have. If you want to, if the court has to look at the balance between the executive and the legislative, and you are shifting powers around, that's considered a change in the form of government. And the way, by going through the ordinance process, was unconstitutional. It was illegal and not allowed. So that's how I got to the conclusion, essentially, by looking at these cases, that A, the village president is the appointing power in most cases. B, the legislative role is to advise and consent, reject, or approve. And C, that we can change that, but it has to be through a referendum. Obviously, that hasn't been done here. So with that being said, that's the background of this very long and somewhat tedious memo. But it is important to lay it out as layman's terms as much as I can. So sorry for rambling on, but I believe that does cover that first slide. If there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them, or we can wait till the next slide. Mike, would you mind going to the next slide? So the next slide is it's pretty easy. So just because the village board is provides the advice and the consent, doesn't mean that they're powerless. Doesn't mean that there's nothing that the village board has no role in this. They absolutely have a huge role, and that is to the fact that there's a whole list of bullet points here. I'm not going to read them all, but just to create or abolish a board of commission. You know, the statutes say you may have a zoning board. You don't necessarily have to have one. You may have. We want one. We're not going to go away from that, but you could abolish it. The village, 4 members of the village board could abolish that, and they can create a commission, as we have with these 6 commissions that I listed. You can put forth qualifications for membership to sit on certain boards, and then the appointment, the appointer, essentially the village president, would have a more restrictive group of individuals to choose from, but you could set qualifications. You can assign duties to a board of commission and provide for their purview. And you can also require scheduling of meetings, minimum number of meetings. You can require reports to come back to you. So there is a lot in which the village board can do when it comes to the boards and commissions. The only thing that in this form of government they can't do is provide the actual name to be submitted for approval. So that's really all I have. I kind of hope that covered everything. And sorry for rambling on a little bit, but I wanted to cover every aspect of that memo.
So Jeff, this is Kathy. I just want, that was helpful, and I appreciate the more layman's term for this, as I'm obviously not a lawyer. So obviously you've laid out here the duties of the what the president, this state law requires, as well as the board. But I believe you said that, but just to reiterate, I mean, this, the both state statutes and the legislative powers, that doesn't at all restrict. I mean, any member of the community can submit their name to be on one of these commissions. Any member of the community can encourage somebody to do that. Any board member can encourage people to do it. So it doesn't mean that people don't have an opportunity to, for lack of a better word, nominate other members to be by submitting a talent bank. It's just that the state requires the submission of the name, for lack of a better word, to come from the president.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, the village president could be, everybody on this call could submit 1 name or 2 names to the village president, or 30 names to the village president, and say that I think this person would serve very well on this commission, or this person wants to serve. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's done quite a bit in most appointments at every level of government, not just local. And it's encouraged. There is nothing wrong or restrictive of doing that at all.
Okay, I just wanted to, and we would encourage it within our community. So.
Okay, before I move on from the legal slides, are there any other questions for Jeff? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to the appointment and selection process in Wilmette. So the next 2 slides, the first is going to focus on our process here in Wilmette, and then the next will summarize how nearby communities handle their appointment and selection process. So in Wilmette, we have talent bank questionnaires that we seek from interested residents who want to serve on a board or commission. When we receive a talent bank questionnaire, that is shared with the entire village board, and then they're held on file for future consideration. Many times, somebody may submit something for Plan Commission or Zoning Board of Appeals, and there's not a vacancy. But a vacancy may arise 1, 2, 3 years later, and we still have those TBQs on file to identify who is interested in serving on that board. On a regular basis, the village staff provides the village president with a list of upcoming term expirations. This helps to make sure that we're prepared to fill vacant slots quickly and efficiently and keep our boards as fully staffed as we can. And prior to a vacancy, the village president reviews the background and experiences and expertise of our existing boards and commissions with our staff, trying to identify needed skill sets to ensure a well-rounded commission. And then what the village president will do is review talent bank questionnaires, try to identify the skill sets that are being sought, and then meets almost always in person with candidates that appear to be a good fit based on their TBQs and the needs of the board or commission. Once a candidate's identified, the village president will then place the name on a village board agenda under the title Recommendation of Appointment. This is similar to introduction of an ordinance, so it's providing notice to the community and the board that this person is going to be considered for appointment. And at this meeting, that individual typically will attend and present their qualifications and introduce themselves to the village board, generally discussing their background, their experience, why they're interested in serving, and oftentimes their history in our community and their family history as well. And as part of this process here at this meeting and then the next meeting when they're appointed, our meeting materials will include the candidate's talent bank questionnaire or a resume. In terms of nearby communities, I surveyed village managers in our area, and as you can see towards the top, the majority of communities follow a similar process to what we just described here in Wilmette. Glencoe and Lincolnshire are fairly similar with some slight tweaks. Once the village president in Glencoe or Lincolnshire identifies a preferred candidate, the commission chair and the staff liaison in Glencoe interview that candidate along with the village president. And in Lincolnshire, once that preferred candidate is identified, the commission chair provides feedback to the village president prior to the appointment being placed on an agenda. Now, in the 3 communities on the bottom, the process is substantially different from what we do here and from what the other communities do. Lake Forest has a caucus that's been in place for a very long time that slates candidates for their city council positions, their mayor, their park board, their school board. They also review applications and interview candidates for the subsidiary boards and commissions of the city council and make recommendations to the mayor for appointments. Deerfield has a volunteer engagement commission that is a standalone commission that is appointed by the mayor, who then in public meetings interviews candidates, reviews their qualifications, deliberates, and then makes recommendations to the mayor regarding appointments. Park Ridge, similar to Deerfield, they have a mayor's advisory group. Rather than resident volunteers, that advisory board is composed of 4 elected alderpersons who, like at Deerfield, interview candidates in public meetings, deliberate, and make recommendations to the mayor. And consistent with what Mr. Stein's analysis was previously, all 3 of these communities, Lake Forest, Deerfield, and Park Ridge, although they have different processes in place, all of these processes still lead to a recommendation to the mayor, who's ultimately responsible for selecting the name and placing that candidate on the agenda for the advice and consent of the village board. So we thought this was helpful background for the community and the committee in terms of processes in our area, and they're generally consistent with the processes I've seen in the other communities I've worked in that aren't on this list.
So,
Really,
Mike,
yeah.
Sorry, can you go back to that for a minute? I just was actually had a question just because I went back and looked at some material that we had from our first meeting. So like, looking at Deerfield as an example, who interviews candidates in a public meeting and things like that. And do they have the same number of commissions that we do? Like I'm looking, it looks like for example, Deerfield doesn't have a housing commission. They don't have a historic preservation commission. I'm just looking at, so do you have a sense of the others? Because we're trying to involve as many members of the community as we can in our various commissions, right? And you know, and get people involved in our community. And that's why I was just asking if these others.
You know, off the top of my head, I couldn't say for certain
Okay.
that they do or
Okay.
not. And I know we generally have more than others because of, you know, the Housing Commission is not necessarily common amongst all these communities. Historic preservation is generally limited to, you know, some of the older communities in the North Shore. So some communities just a little bit west don't generally have those
Yep.
historic preservation commissions. So, you know, I can't say with certainty without going back and looking at each one of them.
Okay.
Mike, a quick question, maybe you know the answer to, maybe not. In Deerfield, do you know how one becomes a member of the Volunteer Engagement Commission? Are you in turn appointed to that?
Yes, yeah, you have to be appointed to that like any other board or commission by the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
And Mike, on Lake Forest, Deerfield, and Park Ridge, it says makes recommendations to the mayor. Do we know, did the mayor accept 100% of them and move those candidates forward, or does the mayor at the end of the day, going back to what Mr. Stein said, has the opportunity to, that the mayor still nominates who they want, even if it's not recommended, but from those committees?
Sure, and I can speak most intelligently to Deerfield because I had a more involved discussion with their staff about that. And they've had this commission in place for about 35 years. And there's a long history of the mayor respecting the process and nominating the recommended candidate.
And then reading President Belinsky's memo and his 127 that he recommended, if I'm understanding Mr. Stein, those 127 came before the boards at the time, and the board had the opportunity to vote yes or no. Did any of those get rejected?
I cannot recall a time in my 10 years in Wilmette when a recommended candidate had been rejected. You know, that was a discussion I had with some of these other communities, and some communities from time to time, and very rarely, you know, would have an executive session if there was concerns about a candidate. But that generally, in most of these communities, the individual who's recommended has been appointed, consistent with what has occurred in Wilmette.
So I guess my question is, because I know one of the requests of the administration committee was to deal with the cronyism that's gone on. How do we address that and take that back to the board that we're comfortable that cronyism isn't an issue in Wilmette?
It is.
Well, Dan, could you maybe put a little sort of definition to what you mean by that?
Well, one of the trustees said that all of the commissions have been stacked, and only people, cronyism, are stacked with people based on relationships and filled because of past relationships, and it was a very selective process and eliminated others. So I want to make sure we address that, and that was what the charge was, that the administration committee go back and look in a way to avoid that view that potential cronyism, or the president, whoever the village president is at the time, is only slating people that they know. Yep. And have relationships with.
He did. I don't know who that is that's speaking. I don't know. Mike?
Me.
Mr. Raymond,
Yes.
do we have everybody on mute?
Alex, are you able to do that?
Just,
Then the committee members would have to unmute themselves.
oh.
Yeah, I've been monitoring the guests, so when there's someone who speaks up, I'll make sure to
I
do them.
felt like we had some guests that were speaking up, so. So
I just, that's my point. That was my point, Peter, is
Yep.
One of our fellow trustees made, you know, when they gave the mandate to us of the administration committee to go through the reviews that we have been, which I think we've done a spectacular job. Obviously, we didn't meet the deadline before Labor Day, which we had made a point that we weren't going to be able to bring back to the board before Labor Day, given timing. But there was also the accusation that all of our commissions are filled with friends of current or past presidents.
Well, you know, I think Bob's memo speaks to that to some extent.
say that. I believe that Bob's memo speaks to that.
Okay,
So,
I agree. I just want to make sure the three of us are unified so that if that comes up again, we're saying the same thing.
well, and so just right now, Dan, what I think, just to clarify kind of what we're not at a stage yet where we're not going to make any. I believe we probably need to make some. I don't know. I don't want to say changes, but we clearly there's some feedback from the community that we need more transparency in terms of how, what happens when somebody submits a talent bank, and how somebody and how they know what commissions have openings, and the status of getting vacancies filled and things like that. So I do believe that as we finish, today we're trying to just do some fact finding. We want to hear from legal counsel what we can do. Now Mike's done some feedback on what other communities has done. I think we want to hear some things from the from residents, and then I do believe the three of us are going to have to kind of take in all that we're hearing today, and we probably are going to need to work together at our next meeting and make some recommendations of how we can improve it so that residents in the community don't believe that it's just the president just picking his favorite people, for lack of a better word. So I think we have some work in front of us to make sure we put together a process that hopefully is more transparent so people feel better about that. And I don't know, Mike, if you want to add to that but.
No, I think that captures it well in the direction we're headed.
Okay.
So
will that be at our next meeting, the September 17 meeting?
Yes. I mean, maybe after we hear, I think you bring up a good point, which is, I don't know that maybe we think President Belinsky's memo addresses it. But maybe you feel like I'd be interested in what what ideas you might have or things we need to do in terms of addressing that concern.
Well, for me, I guess I'm reading, listening to Mr. Stein and reading President Belinsky's memo. I think it would be also interesting to see maybe some of the other past presidents, if they would, sort of, and I've talked to some of them about how they went about the process. And all of these candidates at the end of the day get presented to us at the board. So for me, I'm not seeing where there's or who's been slated recently has been unfair, or there's been an unfair process. So
do we, this is, and you might have provided this to us before, Mike, and maybe this is something you could do, because if you haven't, for everybody who's on our current boards and commissions, did you in our first meeting provide us with who they were selected by? Was that?
Yeah, that was in a previous packet. Who made the initial appointment and who made the reappointment?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought, and that shows that I can't. Yeah.
It gets pretty skewed when you have presidents that serve 2 terms, because a lot of the turnover in the term limits. It usually, most of those turn over a couple times, and with one sitting president.
Yep. Yep.
And we've had this two individuals be president for the last nearly 16 years.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
I think it's a good transition to the last slide here in terms of our next steps, because what we're going to be seeking here, and let's see if I can move. I'm going in the wrong direction here. Sorry, hold on. We're going to be, continuing this discussion at our meeting on September 17th. The idea of today was, to kind of present the framework from a legal standpoint, what our process is and what other communities' processes are, and allow the community to kind of noodle that a little bit, think about it, and also, give the community an opportunity to provide us feedback in advance of the next meeting, similar to what we had done on the Housing and Human Relations Commission's process. So, if residents have suggestions or concerns that they'd like to express to the committee, we would certainly ask that those be emailed to us prior to our September 17th meeting, and those can be sent directly to me or to our public comment at wilmette.com email address, and we'll be sure to share those with the committee and include them as part of our agenda material when we're going to deliberate and discuss whether or not changes to the process are going to be recommended to the full village board. The second bullet point, talks about scheduling additional meetings if necessary. I think as Trustee Dodd had said at the outset, we're pretty far along in the process. This is the last item that this committee is tasked with addressing, and I think we can get that done at our next meeting. And then we'll prepare a final report that will go to the village board in October or November. The board would have to consider that, amend the village code, and then followed by filling vacancies on the Housing and Human Relations Commissions.
Yeah, and so I guess, Mike, the only thing I'd say, in terms of next steps there is I actually think what I think would be really helpful to kind of Dan's point is I think would be really helpful is for anybody who's on the call today. I think we'd love to hear from people today if they have suggestions of things, they'd like to see us consider as we think about making any potential changes or whatever. So again, understanding the limitations we have legally to make any suggested changes. So I think it would be helpful for us to hear that this evening. And then maybe, before we wrap up the meeting, we can be, if there's any questions or discussions on some of those, we can have that.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful to the committee. If there aren't any more questions from committee members on the slides we've covered, then this would be the appropriate time to open this agenda item up to comment from the public. And I do know Alex has a handful of comments that were submitted to read as well.
So so maybe this is a good time for us to open up public comment. Maybe I should just, why don't I remind people a couple of things that just as a reminder. So we'll start with public comment that we've received prior to this meeting. We'll have Alex will read those for us. But as a reminder, individuals are allocated up to 3 minutes to comment on an item that is not on the agenda. Like I said, we'll start with public comment that we've received via email. And then we'll ask people who are on the phone or on Microsoft Teams if they'd like to speak. When we get to that point, we'll put a list together of those, and then we will go through to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. So, and then we'll go and make sure everybody has an opportunity if they would like to. So, can we start with having Alex read the comments you've received in email?
Yep, not a problem. Okay, let's see. Okay, the first comment was submitted by Peter Orr. Dear trustees Dodd, Sullivan, and Barrow, in addition to including my below comments in the written record, I humbly ask that my comments be read into the record at the September 3rd meeting of the Administration Committee. Over the last 2 months, I have attended the Administration Committee meetings regarding the Village of Wilmette's commissions, specifically on the topic of the Housing and Human Relations Commissions. I have contributed both written and oral statements and have greatly appreciated the thoughtful discussions and reports that have been made. Further, I appreciate scheduling the September 3rd meeting in the evening to better accommodate people's schedules. I will try to attend, but unfortunately, I have a scheduling conflict on the 3rd. I cleared my calendar to attend the August 31st meeting before this meeting was rescheduled September 3rd. However, I wish to provide this statement for the upcoming meeting. On the topic of Housing Commission, based on the trustees' discussions in July, I recommend that the list of purposes be a suggested list rather than a mandated list in order of priorities. While the list can indeed highlight areas of importance, I submit that the commissioners are in the best positions to determine the ultimate priorities, especially as we know priorities change given the circumstance, including the unknown circumstances. On the topic of Human Relations Commission, I fully support the listed functions, but would emphasize the need for that commission to have a coordinating requirement with the other village commissions and committees to ensure the functions of the Human Relations Commission are truly achieved. On the topic of the selection process of commissioners, based on comments from many residents Wilmette and personal experience, the appointment process to the different commissions is broken. Wilmette Village posts solicitation for vacancies on the different commissions, and many residents who complete the questionnaire for the talent bank never receive consideration. At best, they receive a form letter consisting of a few sentences and never any follow-up. However, those vacancies still remain. In fact, the Housing and Human Relations Commissions have no active commissioners, yet the solicitation for volunteers still remain posted on the Wilmette Village webpage as of the date of this email. As was explained by Corporation Counsel Stein during the June 23rd, 2020 Village Board meeting, without a referendum, the Village President has the sole authority to make appointments with advice and consent from the Village Board. While I am not suggesting at this time to change the law, I believe the current system can be modified within the current legal structure to allow for public input and transparency. I ask the administration committee to consider recommending the village staff provide this committee with regular reports, the talent pool, and the status of each application. I also suggest that the village president invite members of the board of trustees to assist in interviewing and recommending residents for appointment. The village could maintain a nomination committee to relieve the burden of the village president to solely interview and appoint new commissioners. The nomination committee could also make public to the entire village board its recommendation, but still allowing the village president the sole authority to make the actual appointment. Through this structure, Wilmette residents will have an opportunity to provide input through the administration committee's public meeting when the village staff reports on the status of the talent pool, and the appointment process will have greater transparency when when the nominating committee provides its recommendation in the public forum of a village board meeting. Absent these changes, the widely held perception by Wilmette residents that the appointment process of the village commissions is perfunctory will continue, and sadly, the authority and credibility of these important commissions will be weakened. Given these difficult times when all level of government is viewed with suspicion, I believe it is of utmost importance for the Wilmette village to take a strong active step to help dispel those perceptions. Sincerely, Peter Sung-Or. Okay, moving on to the next public comment. It was submitted by Van Gilmer. So real quick, I believe Mr. Gilmer is in this meeting. Mr. Gilmer, do you want me to read your comment to the record, or would you like for me to hold your comment until we get to you guys being able to speak?
I think the comments are probably as much as I would say. I do have a concern, and that is in that comments as well. It's
okay.
Between the commission, so maybe.
Okay, well, for the time being, I can read your comment to the record, and then if you'd like to speak further, we can accommodate that. Okay, so this was obviously submitted by Mr. Gilmer. Dear members of the Wilmette Village Board Administration Committee, I have been following your discussions and actions in proposing the reestablishment of both the Housing and Human Relations Commissions in Wilmette. While I believe that both commissions are very important, I also think that both will play an important part in making Wilmette more inclusive to particularly Americans of African descent, as well as to many other people of color. That Wilmette is overwhelmingly white and its many residents are in many ways economically advantaged should have raised flags years ago. However, now it appears much too insensitive to not consider how the character of the whole North Shore must be addressed. This is hard, yet it would be totally insensitive of the village to not take the important and drastic steps forward to begin the process of providing an alternative to all white and exclusive neighborhoods. Of course, our communities must also become actively welcoming and inclusive, and this will take work beyond wishing and hoping. I am sure that while affordable housing has come up throughout the North Shore as part of the solution to providing racial inclusion, it will also get bad press and will be very misunderstood without sensitive development. This must be considered by both new commissions. I have also said several places in recent weeks that the North Shore, including Wilmette, already has some affordable housing already occupied by white residents. So this is a deep problem to intellectually resolve. Though I chose to live in Wilmette and have been a resident for over 13 years, no other person of color has moved into my neighborhood, though several homes have sold to white people. This has been the pattern for years, and I suspect it will still take years to overcome. Both commissions must also be able to deal with this as they start up. In the past, I have chosen not to be vocal or active in any way more than expressing my own personal feelings privately, but there has been a dramatic change in our nation and our communities with the reawakening of racism in our country. Now is the time when all of us must seize this opportunity to galvanize the hearts and minds of all of our residents if we truly believe that we live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. With warmest regards, Van Gilmer. Okay, I will move on. The next public comment was provided by Thomas Canifax. Chair Dodd, trustees Barrow and Plunkett. It is very unfortunate that Wilmette is without its Human Relations Commission during a time of social unrest. We urge this committee and the Board of Trustees to restore this important commission, which was a testament to Wilmette's desire for a diverse community, one which welcomed people of all income levels, races, religions, and cultures. As a working body, the commission's touchstone was equity, a desire to ensure all residents were treated with fairness and equality. Thank you for including our view in your deliberations. Nancy and Tom Canifax. Okay, moving on to the next public comment that was provided by Sherry Medwin. Dear trustees Dodd, trustee Sullivan, trustee Varro, and village manager Bremen, thank you for keeping the community updated on the progress of the administration committee and for your dedication to the ideal of improving our suburban culture. I sincerely hope that community involvement will extend to the appointment of members to the Human Relations and Housing Commissions. These commissions should be staffed not by those who serve the needs of the board president, but by residents who serve the needs of the entire community, to diversify housing options and to uplift all who live or would like to live or work here. I hope you were as horrified as I was at the hate crime committed at Winnebago's Tower Road Beach a few weeks ago, when several African-American men stopped at the public pier after a long bike ride. One was approached by Northfield resident Irene Donoshaitis, who said, "This is America. This is America. You can't do this. I'm from Winnetka. You need to go back where you're from." When the victim laughed, the woman asked, "Are you crazy? What, you want to kill me?" She's recorded as saying. She then confirmed that she believed he wanted to kill her because he was black. A sad day for Winnetka, a cautionary tale for the North Shore. Although this incident did not, thank goodness, occur on Wilmette's lakefront, it could have. If we want to build an inclusive community, it's imperative to staff these commissions with representatives from all sectors of our demographics who have the progressive vision to create a culture welcoming to all law-abiding citizens. Thank you again for inviting community participation in these important decisions. Sincerely, Sherry Medwin. Okay, and the last email that we received at our public comment email address was submitted by Lorelei McClure. Dear members of the Administration Committee, thank you for your commitment to recommend to the Board of Trustees the reactivation of the Human Relations Commission and working to make those recommendations ones that will truly have the potential to begin an intentional development and unfolding of a more inclusive community. These recommendations would have the Commission be one that welcomes diversity in all levels, that understands the value of such diversity, that looks to nurture the welfare of every single soul and assist in building true friendly relationships among all groups and organizations in the community. I have read the guidelines for effective human relations commissions, your own deliberations, and comments submitted by many of us community members. You have a wealth of good material from which to write the guidelines for our own human relations commission. I want only to highlight a few items that were mentioned at earlier meetings. It was a delight to hear the intention of appointing youth to the commission with the full force of membership. Listening to them and expecting to learn from them as well will be an asset. To see the diversity we seek out for our community reflected in the appointed members of the commission is vital and foundational at the outset. To my mind, it is essential to make clear the mission goals, available means and resources accorded to the commission, and the responsibilities spelled out with commensurate authority to act within that framework. I would hope that whatever these new beginnings set forth as policy and guidelines for the Commission, they be viewed as living documents to be adjusted and modified in the natural progression towards the realization of our goal, to sustain and ever advance the notion of community in our community, Wilmette. As always, I sincerely thank you. Loving regards, Lorelei McClure. And those were all the comments we received at the public comment email address.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Al. That was very helpful. Okay, so if anybody would like to speak, who is now currently on Microsoft Teams or has joined us on the telephone, if you could unmute your phone and say your name, we'll put a list together of who would like to speak.
This is Lori Elkin. I would like to speak.
Lori, what was your last name? I'm sorry.
Elkin, E-L-K-I-N.
Yep, thank you. Okay.
Van Gilmer.
Van, you'd like to speak? Okay. I think Alex is just help. Okay, anybody else?
Looks like Cindy Fay has her hand up in Teams.
Got it. Thank you, Cindy Fay. Okay. And so, is there any other is there any other mechanism of where people might be trying to tell us they'd like to speak that I need to be aware of?
We do have some at least one YouTube live comment for Alex to read. I don't see anybody else on Teams that's indicated an interest in speaking.
Okay, and Alex, he already read the YouTube live comment or no?
I did not know. There are 2 comments on YouTube Live. I can read them real quick if you'd like.
Okay, wait, hold on, hold that thought for a minute. I just want to make sure. So far we have 3 people, Lori, Van, and Cindy. So I just want to make sure, is there anybody else who would like to speak? I don't see anybody else either. Okay. Okay, great. Why don't you speak those 2 comments, Alex, and then if somebody comes up, then we can address it.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so there were just 2 additional comments made, a couple questions about like where to find the agenda packet, but the 2 comments that want to be read, I believe, from Leslie Wayrich. These commissions have languished greatly in the past and appointments have not been made. How will that improve going forward? And then Alan Hatchett said, actively seeking applicants that have cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds, which are not the majority, would be helpful. And those are, the rest of the YouTube comments were just questions that I was able to answer.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So why don't we start then just in the order that we got them? So Lori, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. I echo what we've been hearing, that it's absolutely vital that the membership of the commission be diverse. And to that end, I worry a bit that replacing the word shall with language such as it's our goal or should could result in a commission membership that's less than diverse. Perhaps one idea is we shall use our best efforts to ensure that it's diverse and has these different constituencies represented. I just would urge some careful thought around how to make it most likely that the membership will in fact be diverse through the language we use. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Appreciate your comment. Okay, Van.
Yes, I have I want to say something about both of the commissions, the housing and human relations. And one of the things I've been wondering is what relationship will they have with each other? It seems every time now here in the North Shore that we talk about how do we diversify the residents, we speak of affordable housing or something to do with housing. And one of the things people do is they either look for or we reach out to them to find out what is available and what and how they move. So now we think that is human relations, but also the housing it has something to do, I think, with the 2. And I'm not sure if you've thought through what kind of a relationship the 2 will have. For instance, if there is some kind of housing that would be available, who advertises that? Who welcomes people? So that's that question. I really don't have anything else that I'm assuming that you are looking for a diverse membership. And I'll tell you this quick story. As we had a march up to Winnetka, I saw a Black female at the march, and she came up to me and she asked me, "Where do you live?" I said, "I live in Wilmette." She says, "I live in Wilmette." She was mad that we've been here for 10 or 13 years and not ever seen each other or don't know each other. So Human Relations Commission, I'm sure, does something with creating more of a community feel. And then whatever we do to attract people has something to do with the human relations, but it also has to do with what the Housing Commission does. And that's all I have. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for your additional comments, Van.
Mhm.
Okay, Cindy, I believe, was the next person who would like to speak. So Cindy, you will need to unmute yourself so we can hear you. So I believe Cindy, it looks like you are on Microsoft Teams because I believe it was Cindy Fay. And so to do that, all you need to do is kind of move your mouse around and then you'll see like a little box should pop up and you can turn your mute from on to off. Okay, I'm not sure.
Trustee Dodd, if Ms. Fay is unable to unmute herself, we can reach out to her. We have her email address.
Okay.
And we can get her comment and relay that to the committee members and add that to the minutes, and also work with her so that at our next meeting, if she does wish to address the committee live, that she's able to do so.
Okay, great. So is that, I believe then that we can close public comment on that particular topic? Okay.
Yes,
So
I think we've covered everybody.
Okay. All right, great. So actually, while we were doing public comment, I was listening. Actually, I wanted to come back to something Trustee Sullivan had asked. And I just want to make sure, Mike, you did a really nice job walking through kind of President Belinsky's memo and things like that. But obviously, there's some questions came up. There's some feedback that's come up about his appointments and things like that. There is something in the memo that President Belinsky included that talked about, just gave percentages of the various talent bank questionnaires and how people were, whether he knew these people or not, and think, you know what I mean? Could you share that, or I could do it if you'd like, Mike. I just thought it'd be helpful since I think the three of us as trustees said we feel like President Belinsky's memo addressed it, but maybe some members who are on the call actually didn't get into the details of his memo. Obviously, there's a lot of information in the packet because it talks about, it has percentages of all the appointments he's made, what percentages there are. Do you know what I'm talking about, this table?
I do, and
the reason I bring it up is it was addressed in a public meeting that's gotten out, and I have talked to some of the sitting individuals that have been appointed to that commission, which are offended by that. The feeling like they only got there because of their relationship with Bob when they didn't know Bob before they reached out to him. So I think it's just in fairness to all the volunteers who filled out a talent bank questionnaire and went through the process that I think President Belinsky laid out and are giving back to the community. I don't want them to feel slighted at all.
So I just do this. Trustee, I just pulled up the packet on my screen. I can share that real quick.
Perfect. Can you just share that little table, basically, is what I'm asking. Thank you. Okay. And so for those of you who are on the phone, there was in the packet, and if you did not receive the packet, you can go to our website and get it. And like Alex said, we're happy to forward it along to you. And in the packet, there is starting on page 35 of the packet, there is a memo from President Belinsky, and what we're showing you is on page 36. And it's a little hard to read. Is there a way you can make it bigger, Bob? Mike?
Try to make it a little bit bigger. And I can briefly summarize the table. So President Belinsky has been in this role as village president since May of 2013. And he's made a total of 127 recommendations of appointment or reappointment over that time period. But when you remove out the reappointments as well as individuals that, as Mr. Stein had identified, are slated per state statute and 2 former village trustees, it leads to 47 new appointments to our boards and commissions. So what President Belinsky did was break down how those individuals came to his attention. So of those 47, 36 were TBQ submissions or somebody who directly outreached to him that he had not known previously. 2 were TBQ submissions or direct outreach to him from individuals that he had already known. So that's about 81% of the new appointments to boards and commissions were from TBQ submissions or direct outreach from that individual who is interested in serving. 6 or 13% were introductions to him from somebody else, whether that's a village board member or an existing board and commission member who introduced a potential candidate to him. And 3 or 6% were direct outreach by President Belinsky. Generally, as he discussed below in the memo, those are usually individuals that he's trying to identify for a specific land use position in terms of needed expertise, whether that be architecture, developer, landscape architect, and the like.
Okay. Thank you. That was I apologize that I didn't ask you to do that sooner, and so we maybe backtracked a little bit, but I just thought that would be a very important thing to share, and I appreciate the perspective, actually, Trustee Sullivan, that you stated, which is I think we want to be very sensitive here because we have a lot of very talented members that are serving on our commissions, and they volunteered themselves and they're volunteering their time, and we sure don't want to make them feel bad by doing this and thinking that it wasn't their knowledge or expertise and things like that that got them into these positions. It was more their relationship with our president, which is just not what we want to do. So thank you. Okay, so in terms of next steps, I want to, as we're going to move forward, I want to go back to kind of and share with you guys just briefly. This will take just about how we want to go forward here. So based on the comments that we've received, I have 2 thoughts here in terms of things to have the staff kind of look at. So one is we clearly have some questions out there around the talent bank questionnaire process. Once somebody, or maybe opportunities for improvement is a better way of looking at this, as opposed to, I think we have some opportunities in terms of when somebody is submitting a talent bank questionnaire, what's the process of when they get notified? If they're not appointed to a commission after 6, 12, 18 months or whatever, what's our additional outreach? I mean, I've heard from a number of residents who have submitted a talent bank questionnaire and are not placed on a commission for a year or two. And I look to that to just say, I think that's something, staff, that we need you guys to be thinking about and coming back to us with, as well as I think we've talked about just advertising more, vacancies that are available and how we can do that. So that's kind of one kind of area I think we should be addressing. The second thing that I have an idea about that I'd like to you guys, Dan and Peter, to just be kind of thinking about is, and maybe because we've obviously had a trustee address this in a public meeting, but it feels like there should be some report to the board on a somewhat regular basis that would be part of our board packet that would share with us, the upcoming vacancies that are coming up on these particular commissions, and what who might be leaving and what kind of experience they had, what kind of skill set, what kind of background, diverse background they had. That's an opportunity, one, to have it be communicated then to the broader community. It's also an opportunity for, it's also an opportunity then for us as village board members to, it provides some just review of the current state of the commissions. And it might help us if we got to, this place today where there was nothing happening on the housing commission, and we're moving beyond that. But if we had a more regular report from staff on that, it would come to the board's attention more predominantly, and we could address it. So it would be something like the way we handle, some of the more items that are on consent on our agenda, whether it's the monthly, I'm not suggesting monthly, but we have a monthly financial report or whatever. So it would be a report from the staff on a somewhat frequent basis, regular basis, that we could use, that would help us then, if there were issues or questions a board member had to the president, we could use that as an opportunity to do that. So, and we don't have to get into the details today of what that is going to look like, but I kind of wanted to bring those 2 things up to you guys to think about and consider. And then I'd ask if you guys have other, based on what we've hearing, is there any other things you might suggest? Again, just give some direction to Mike now, based on what we've heard of what we might want to, so that we can really move this forward and come to some consensus at the next meeting. That was a mouthful. Sorry, you guys.
No, Kathy, that's very valuable. Those two plus, if you will, are really important things that we want to flesh out really a bit more. There's no question that we can improve the process and transparency of the talent bank questionnaire procedure. And I think more understanding on our part and the residents' part will only be a good thing.
Yep.
And may be effective to dispel some of the you got to know somebody in order to know somebody, because that's certainly not been my experience serving on two separate boards. The president that made my recommendation had never met me before. So I think you're on the right track with both.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comments there, Peter, because I was the same way. I didn't know the president that appointed me until I got interviewed. So, and I leave it up to, Mr. Brayman, if, what Kathy, I think you're saying is maybe create a dashboard of, all the commissions, how many seats are vacant, and sort of a forecast of what might be opening up in a period of time, and whether you do that quarterly or every 6 months. I don't know how often it turns over. I'm sure Eric can come up with some kind of forecasting model. He's gotten pretty good at forecasting, so I trust his models. But all joking aside, maybe you could look at and say zoning board, 7 members, 2 members set to come off, and we present that to the board. It's on consent, and somebody can pull it off and talk about it. I mean, if there's a commission for whatever reason that has 3 or 4, and maybe you put on there sort of, what's the queue of talent bank applications in there. So if we know we got 100 applications in, and we see a commission that is less than 50% staffed, we can at least ask President Belinsky whether it's at a public meeting or in our normal course.
Yeah. Okay.
But sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I don't know, Mike. I hope that's just helpful in terms of giving you something to be thinking about.
Yeah, that's helpful. So we'll start thinking about that. And also, I think that addresses one of the public comments we had received about, the commissions languishing previously, and how we'll ensure that they do not. I think, Trustee Dodd, that's your intent.
Yes.
And I do just want to clarify for the public, it is absolutely and fully our intent, once we make these code changes to the Housing Commission and Human Relations Commission, to fill those as quickly as we can and get those working for the community.
The last thing I just, as all of us think about this process going forward, I want to remind us that, these are volunteers in the community who are volunteering their time. Most of these people who are volunteering have full-time jobs or full-time parents or whatever they might be doing. And, I want to make sure that, we're not looking to put in a rigorous interview process. I want to be sensitive to, we need, and hopefully by doing more communication, we need members in the community to step up, be willing to volunteer their time. We're so appreciative of all of you who are on the call tonight and willing to give us some feedback. And so I just, I want to just say from my own perspective that, I want to make sure as we finalize any tweaks we want to make, that we, I guess, interviewing somebody in a public meeting, for lack of a better word, is just, we were talking about wanting to be welcoming as a welcoming community. We've heard so much feedback from everybody about being welcoming and wanting to, respect people's, opinions. And so to me, that I struggle with that. Let me just say that.
Ditto.
I'm not saying we were going to go in that direction, Mike. I just wanted to, let you know that. So, and I see both Peter and Dan kind of nodding. So anyways, but all right. So with that, I think we can close this topic for now.
Yeah, Trustee Dodd, just real quick. I know Alex has been interfacing with Ms. Fay on our YouTube live feed, so I'm not sure. I think I thought she was unmuted for a second there, and she was going to be able to unmute. But we do have public comment coming up as we finish out the meeting. So, if she's able to unmute during that process, we can hear from her then.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, if we can close that out, the next item on the agenda is just new business. I don't believe we have any new business unless any of the other trustees would like to add anything. So then item 5 on the agenda is public comment. This would be, besides actually Cindy, I guess, this would be an opportunity for anybody to bring anything in front of this committee that was not on the agenda. So basically anything outside of kind of boards and commissions and things like that. So let me take a moment to see, did we get any written public comment, Alex, or something to share that was outside of the agenda topics?
No, all public comments provided or provided to the email address already read.
Okay. And so is there anybody on the phone that would like to speak to us about an item that was not on the agenda? And if so, please unmute yourself and say your name.
It looks like Mrs. Fay is asking again to be told how to unmute yourself. So Ms. Fay, if you are just scrolling on your screen, there should be a little bar that jumps up on the bottom of your screen. It has tells you that like the recording, or sorry, the meeting is being recorded. It has the camera icon, a microphone icon. You just need to click on that microphone icon.
It should be her second icon, right?
Yep. And when you're on mute, there's a little slash through the icon. Once you're not on mute, it's just going to be the microphone icon by itself.
And I believe she was able to do this to get herself to say her name. Okay.
You know, I may be able to share my screen. Oh, it looks like she's leaving.
Wait, she's leaving. Okay.
Uh,
All right, well, let's just make sure.
we'll reach out and
yeah,
get the comment.
If you ask her then to send us if she would like to, she could send the 3 of us an email to make sure that we all have her comments. That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that, I would like to request a motion to adjourn the meeting. Well, actually, I mean, I'm assuming then that we don't have anybody else who wants to speak. I hope I didn't go too quickly.
She did come back on, so, and I don't know, Alex is looking, I'm just.
She did. She rejoined the meeting. She's still showing as muted though, unfortunately.
And you, Alex, as the moderator. Oh.
This is Lori Elkin. Can I, also, if she holds down her space bar, that should unmute her.
Thank you. Good to know.
All the tricks we're learning.
It does work.
Yeah, and unfortunately on my end, I can mute all participants, but I can't unmute anyone. The only person that can unmute is yourself. So.
But I think what Lori said is correct because I just tried it. If she just hits the space bar, it's going to automatically unmute her. Cindy, did you hear that? Thanks for that suggestion, Lori.
Sure, I just learned it myself, so I thought I'd pass it along.
I'll remember that. Okay, so I want to Cindy, I want to apologize that you have not had an opportunity to speak to us tonight. It clearly isn't our intent to allow everybody to have an opportunity to speak to us. I think we've tried to be pretty patient, but at this point, I think I'm not sure what else we could do to allow you to do it. Is there a way she could just call in?
There is go ahead, Alex, please.
We do have a dial-in access code available on our event calendar on the website. So for future reference, you can join through either the Teams app or you can call in as well. I know, like I've seen Cindy Fay's name in the emails I've sent out, updating people on agenda materials and whatnot. So I can reach out to her and ask to have her email in any public comments in.
Okay.
And we haven't made any decisions. We're still going to talk about things on September 17th.
So we'll make sure that we have an opportunity for her to speak and provide some comments. Okay.
Oh, she just wrote. She just said, "Hi, thanks for your efforts to teach me online." So.
All right. Well, in our next meeting, like we did, with our process previously, we'll be taking comments from the public prior to the committee's deliberation. So Cindy will have a chance to share her thoughts and comments with the committee prior to any decisions being made.
Great. Thank you for reminding everybody that. Okay, so with that, I'd like to make a motion to get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
And then
Seconded.
okay.
Second.
Mike, can you please call the roll to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, everybody, for attending. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Barrow.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
All right. We stand adjourned.
All right, thanks
Thank
again,
you, Brenda.
everybody. Oh, so our
Thank you.
next meeting is, I think we said this, but Thursday, September 17th at
7:30.
7:30 PM. So we'll see everybody then. Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Good
Thank
night.
you.